Here we are. Sunday morning.
Easy like Sunday morning. Just did a Carl Landry Record Club, so I'm hitting the ground running right now.
Wow. Podcast to podcast.
Yep. Bouncing around.
Few people have tried it.
Yep. Sometimes don't blame me if I get confused and start talking about my morning jacket. So that's what we're just doing.
I'm going to start singing. Just to fuck you up. I'm going to start singing. How's the colon?
Still pretty good, still unaffected.
Mm-hmm. Has it closed up from your man-made medicine that you needed?
Has it closed up? You mean
they took the medicine? They asked you to take the medicine, so then it could.
Oh yeah, I don't think it opens it. It clears you
but
out.
At least it cleared up.
Yeah. I'm back to my normal schedule.
Okay.
I have a very regular number 2 schedule.
I can open it up whenever I need. I don't think I can close it up when I need. That's sort of the problem. That's sort of what the Gut Plus does for me. But give me a couple of days, take off the Gut Plus. Say we need this to open up. I say, no problem.
For me, it's every day, twice before 7 a.m. and then not again.
That's nice.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, well, you remember I get up earlier, so there's more time in there. But that's just sort of how my body works.
CJ, how's your body work?
What's your number 2 schedule?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a specific schedule. I kind of just listen to it and it goes. I don't know. I work remote, so it's kind of easy just to whenever it needs to happen, it happens.
Yeah,
that's nice. Yeah. I've never been able to listen to my body. That's the problem. The connectivity between body and brain has never been good.
Has a mind of its own.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. What a weird filter in that was. Is your colon closed? The Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast is presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook by using promo code RTRS. Brought to you by Briggs Auction, the official auction of the Ricky, briggsauction.com, LL Pavorsky Jewelers, where Rights to Ricky Sanchez listeners go and get engaged. A Big Barker therapeutic dog beds. Get yours at bigbarker.com/Ricky. And Stateside Urban Craft Vodka, the official sponsor of the Corner 3 newsletter with Zoe, statesidevodka.com. All right, on the show today, the Harden view that we have shared in that we do not want him back is starting to turn, I think, in public opinion as we're getting some pushback from callers and emailers. So we will address that. I have 4 NBA takes that I would like to run by Mike and get his comment on. And TJ McConnell is now a sports owner. That's right. TJ McConnell is the owner of a sports team. Pretty fucking wild. Before we get going, I did mention Stateside Urban Craft Vodka. I was driving, my wife and I were on the car near MetLife Stadium, in the car near MetLife Stadium on the highway on 95 yesterday, and saw a Surfside billboard. As I believe Surfside is now available in New York. Was not before, but it is now. So very exciting news. Of course, it's summer, and there's no better alcohol drink companion to summer than Surfside iced tea and vodka. Of course, all different flavors, peach tea and vodka, lemonade, iced tea and vodka, lemonade and vodka. It is just lightly sweet. It is it's perfect. And there's no carbonation, because there is no carbonation in iced tea. You can get them all at statesidevodka.com, no matter where you live, but you've got to be 21 to drink it. And a sad note, we got an email from Shane letting us know that his very close friends, no, we didn't get the email from Shane. Did we get the email from Shane? No, the email was from Casey. No. Yes, the email was from, no. Let me start that over, even though this is live. Shane and Casey. Their dog, Chance, 10 years old, a Process Pup, and a very good boy, passed on to the Rainbow Bridge. Chance was waiting for Shane and Casey to bring back twins. They just had twins. They were in the ICU for a while, and Shane has said that Chance stuck around just long enough to make sure that the babies got home safely. It always makes me incredibly sad to learn of these things. I look at the emails and I start tearing up. So we just want to send our love to Shane and Casey, and our love to Chance, and God bless Chance and your new babies and your entire family. Very happy that you were able to share love with Chance, and he was able to share it with you. Without any further ado, Amos and the Chef.
We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We was right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We were right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. Say the name.
Welcome to the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. I'm Spike Eskin, along with a guy who, if his body was in connection with his mind, wouldn't listen anyway. That is one Mike Levin.
That's right.
Is that true?
They got nothing to say to each other. Keep them separate.
Here we are on a Sunday morning in the off season. I wonder if you are back to watching basketball. We do have a lot of listeners who have said that they are not. They have given up on watching basketball, refused to watch the playoffs after the Sixers were eliminated. I know you were that way for a while, and I wonder if you have come back.
I would say lightly back, but not arranging my life around basketball. So there have been, I have not watched a full NBA Finals game.
Okay.
It just hasn't worked out. And I'm fine with that because it depresses me.
So I was thinking during my run yesterday, I had all these takes that I was working on, and I feel like you are a good ombudsman for my takes, telling me whether they're legitimate or illegitimate. And I would like to give you the takes and have you respond to them.
Okay.
You ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. I'm going to start. I don't want to say hot, but I want to start with Jimmy Butler, who obviously I have had a lot of experience in the take space with. And as I have admitted several times, he is much better than I gave him credit for. And I do believe he has improved. I do think he is a better player today than he was when he was with the Sixers. All that said, there's one thing that I continued to say that I do believe is correct, and I do believe will continue to be correct, in that Jimmy Butler cannot be the primary offensive player on a team that wins the title. He is not dynamic enough as a scorer. He is not good enough as a creator. And I think what is interesting is that this Miami team that has made it to the finals, a lot is made of the fact that there are not other great scorer types. You know, here's undrafted free agent number 1, undrafted free agent number 2, yada, yada, yada. It is almost as if a Jimmy Butler team needs to have players that are sort of less good than him offensively, so he can continue to be who he is offensively. You know, he's been in 2 places where there is a theoretical option that is before him. One with Philadelphia, one with Minnesota. He blew up in both places. So I do think, looking at the history of players like Andre Iguodala and now Aaron Gordon, players who were miscast as one options, not saying that Butler is the same level of player, but Jimmy Butler would be far more important to a championship team, would be a far better asset if he would be willing to accept a role that was not the role that he carries in Miami. Mike, your response.
I think it's probably going to be one of my long providing context answers that isn't actually good or really useful to anybody. But I mean, a guy's been to 2 finals already.
Yep.
I don't think that there is a material difference between getting to 2 finals and winning one. The Eastern Conference Finals is often just as hard as the NBA Finals. I think it is. There are so many
Karl
things that go
Malone,
into it.
good enough to win the
No,
finals.
I think absolutely. I think all as far as good enough to win it, like it's not. It just doesn't seem to me like any valuable analysis to go like this person hasn't won a championship yet, and that separates them. And I understand why like players want to win them, but as far as like who is better, the fact that he's been to 2, and for the sake of my bet that I put down, would love for him to win this one. I am on strike, Jimmy. If you don't win this NBA Finals, then you are a scab. You do support the studios. So I'm going to need you to come back from down 3-1.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I think would it be nicer if like Dame or Paul George or some like typically more consistently gifted offensive player was on this team with him? Sure. I'm sure that would be helpful. I think the point about like him needing to be like the center and the sort of the gravitational center of any offensive universe is probably somewhat valuable as far as like in the regular season, he defers a lot, right? That's why his numbers are lower. That's why he didn't make the All-Star team. Like he's not doing what he's doing now in the regular season, or typically what he does in the playoffs during the regular season. He's fine to let other players operate and stuff. And him and Bam are an interesting like pivot point for shooters to like rotate around him. And in the playoffs, it's like, all right, I'm pretty much just gonna go ISO when I need to. I do wonder like what does he do? Say you put Dame on this Heat team right now. It's probably a lot of Dame Bam pick and rolls.
Right. And
what's Jimmy doing while that's happening?
Especially because he doesn't like shooting off the catch that much.
Doesn't love shooting off the catch, especially in the regular season. I mean, he's willing to do it more in the playoffs, but yeah, I mean, I think that's the case with any like he's obviously a gifted offensive player and obviously can like gut his way into doing it, but he's probably not as good as Kawhi was at his peak offensively. And has limitations shooting off the catch. So it's like it's a lot of like grunging out possessions, and it seems like he's done that enough in these playoffs, and the shooting variance has been enough that he's gonna they got to the finals from it. But yeah, he's definitely not like a top 10 offensive player. But sorry.
I'm sorry. To your point about him, the playoffs versus regular season. In the playoffs, he averages 21 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists, which is almost exactly what he's like during the regular season. Like, I think there is now. Obviously, he has been more in recent years. Absolutely, 100%. But I do think he's better than he was in recent years. Whatever. I understand your point. And
I also the point about the stats. I think just to hit on that is like obviously the competition is better in the playoffs. So if you're averaging the same amount of points, rebounds, whatever, if you dig deeper into advanced stats or whatever, obviously more difficult to do that than to play against like Detroit or Charlotte on a regular game.
Guy saying in the comments, the same point could be made about Embiid, and I'm a bitter ex-girlfriend. I know the same point can be made about Embiid. I think sometimes people don't understand when we say that we hate, like, we are as critical of the Sixers as any non-Sixers entity. I'm not coming at this as like with a giant E on my chest that Joel Embiid is like, I'm in touch with reality.
Yeah, especially now.
Yes.
After years of probably defending Embiid and giving him the benefit of the doubt a lot. Now we're definitely as critical as anybody.
Yes. Mike said that he should quit.
Well, everybody should quit. or be fired, including us.
Take number 2. There has been a lot of conversation about the regular season being meaningless in the NBA or less valuable than it used to be. Of course, with the Warriors winning the title last year, I think they were a 5 seed or something like that. And then with all of the low seeds progressing in the playoffs this year. But here we are, with a team who is the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, pretty smoothly at this point, dominating the 8th seed in the other conference. The number 1 seed, who, by the way, has had the regular season MVP 2 consecutive years, and number 2 in voting the 3rd year, with consistency in his roster and his coaching. My take would be the regular season is now becoming undervalued, and it is more difficult than you think it is to just sort of coast during the regular season and win in the playoffs. I think this season has provided sort of a misnomer as to how important the regular season is. Mike, your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much hand-wringing. I get why the NBA wants to make it as compelling as possible, and why they care from a like player rest standpoint and a load management standpoint and stuff. But like this stuff seems to only bug the NBA. Like UConn won the national championship as a 3 seed. The Phillies made a run to the World Series as a 7, whatever the last wild card team is.
Yeah.
There's been plenty of times. It seems like the analysis about NBA basketball specifically is like easily the worst nationally among any other sport. It just seems like they don't really want to talk about basketball ever. They don't want to talk about things being interesting on the court, whereas football, it feels like there's obviously narrative stuff into play, but football analysis seems to be like we're analyzing the game, and NBA is just like, why don't people give a shit? And it's just like, I feel like that's so not valuable. So I agree with you. I like the regular season. I don't think the NBA should be ashamed of having a regular season that is like interesting for people that like the sport. And if they're trying to appeal to like people that don't like the NBA and going like, we don't want to, it's too much, or there should be crazy fireworks like friggin' Adam Aaron doing like player intros. Like, just people like basketball. The people that like basketball, and they'll watch because they like basketball. And I don't think it's wrong for teams to think, okay, the regular season we play one way, and then the playoffs, rotation shorten up. We give fewer opportunities to like run the offense on guys that don't necessarily deserve it. You got to allow people to work through the mistakes, to put the playoffs in mind. But the idea that it like doesn't matter at all or isn't interesting to watch, I think is really, really stupid.
Well, AU made this point in his recent article about Harden, and I think it is a good one, is most of the basketball we watch is regular season basketball.
Sure.
And most teams don't win the title. So, speaking of winning, Briggs Auction, sponsor of the Ricky.
Yeah.
Mike, we have big news in that CJ has won another Briggs Auction lot. Yes. CJ, tell us about the lot. BriggsAuction.com. Here we go.
Yeah, that's right. I got a move coming up later this week, and I need some furniture, and furniture is expensive. Yep. And I looked at Briggs Auction, and I found the perfect coffee table for me. It's the best coffee table that could fit in my new living room. And I looked online. Like, I didn't know the brand. It just sounded fancy. Looked online.
What sounds fancy?
Like multiple like first names combined together. Like,
okay.
Yeah. And I looked online.
John David Allen.
Yeah, it was expensive, new, and I got it for not very expensive. So
wow,
feeling good. And I went in like the last 30 seconds. I ripped it away from the.
You swooped.
Bidder. Yeah.
Congrats to CJ on his Mark David Chapman coffee table, on his John Wilkes Booth.
That's it. Yep.
I lost in that auction that just ended up. I lost one lot, but I am still in the bidding for the current Dust Shuttle auction, which doesn't close till last week. Briggs Auction, you can download the app in the App Store or Google Play. You can go to BriggsAuction.com. Estate auctions, discovery auctions. There was a patio auction last week talking about furniture, clothing, collectibles. There were a ton of baseball cards in the last one. Art. It is helpful, like it is shown with CJ, especially with furniture, clothing, things like that. It is fun to look at what's there. And I think online auctions are actually really fun. I get competitive. And they have great shit. BriggsAuction.com. Pickup is by appointment during the week. Saturdays, open pickup. They can even work with you on a shipper. If you get a bigger lot, you can't come pick it up. And if you want to downsize, if you have a bunch of art or something you want to auction off, Briggs Auction is the only place to go. Send an email to info@briggsauction.com. Congratulations to CJ. Briggs Auction. All right. 2 more takes. Gonna give you the harder one first and then the more positive one second.
Okay.
Number 3 is about Jayson Tatum. So Jayson Tatum has received what seems like a lot of slander publicly for his play in the playoffs. He did get hurt in that deciding game against the Miami Heat. The Celtics have been criticized a bunch. Jayson Tatum is 25 years old. At 25 years old, he has been to 4 Eastern Conference championships. He has been to the finals once, and he has several signature playoff moments in big spots.
I just hate hearing this. I'm just going to lay down for a little bit as you
I'm
talk.
just saying, he is not even in his prime yet. Nikola Jokic is 28. Joel Embiid is 29. Tatum is 3 years from that and has already accomplished what he's accomplished. We have compared oftentimes Joel to Dirk in terms of success. I think Tatum is actually a far better comparison to somebody like Dirk, who gets criticized too heavily. And I think there is a world that you could compare Tatum to Durant, given his success so far. So my take is people are a little hard on Jayson Tatum, and he may even be better than he gets credit for.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like narratively, like that's obviously a very impressive resume.
Mm-hmm.
I think this sort of goes with what I was saying earlier about like kind of the Jimmy Butler rings or nothing culture. Tatum obviously like ripped Game 6 from the Sixers and then stormed through Game 7. But like it's a very like what have you done for me lately type thing without much in the way of context. And so now it's about like does he have it or does he fucking want it enough or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's very good, and I would be thrilled if Boston broke up Jalen and Jayson. Would be thrilled about it. That sounds great. Do that. Please do that. Do that for me, a lifelong Celtics fan who wants their success. But yeah, he's very good. They're a very good team. They're a frustratingly good team. I'm dying for them to, and that's why like this, like last season when they were like clinging to a play-in berth, and all of a sudden in January they just became the best team in the league for the rest of the run. So I would love for them to have like a total collapse season where they like lose to the Bulls in the play-in. Like I just would love it. I would really like it. I think I am owed it. But yeah, I mean, he's very good. I don't disagree with that. Like him having this much success without like winning a championship at this age is not any indictment on him as a player. He's obviously very good, to my everlasting shame.
So finally, I want to throw some love and hope toward our very own Joel Embiid, who we have obliterated, rightly so and fairly, for the last several weeks. Here we have Nikola Jokic about to win the title, obviously showing that he is, at this point, I believe, pretty clearly the best player in basketball. But he does so after winning 2 consecutive MVPs, not winning this one, and with a team that is constructed largely to work around him and fill his deficiencies. Obviously, he's a great player. I'm not saying he's not a great player, but there has been a lot of consistency and positive team building around Nikola Jokic. Giannis also did not win the title until after he had won 2 consecutive MVPs and eventually settled in with a team that helped, complement who he was. Having a point guard that doesn't need the ball all the time, sort of can play off or on ball in Drew Holiday. Having a guy like Brook Lopez, who is the rarest version of player in that you talk about having a player like him and there's really only him like him. While Joel does need more signature playoff moments. And I do believe his performance in Game 7 against the Celtics was shameful, to say the least.
Yeah.
I do think that he deserves us to be open to the fact that he could accomplish this, though we are, and we'll talk about this next with the Harden thing, talking about even more changes around him, which don't really line up with the other two players. So it's less of a take and more of a hope guy.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not writing off the idea that if I thought that there was no way that a team built around Joel could have a sustained playoff success, then I would be all in favor of moving him.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't feel that way. Yeah, he's just, I think the continuity thing is interesting. Like, we go back and forth with this a lot of like the continuity of Denver during this run, of Milwaukee during the Giannis run, of Miami to some extent, of Boston, like obviously Golden State. There are a lot of teams that have had success and then have kept that core together. The Sixers have not had success, and we're blaming their lack of success on, over the course of the last 5-6 years, various members of that, pieces of that core. And so I think if you go like, I mean, does that mean we want to keep Tobias because he has been around long enough and we can do one more year and that's enough of like there's a symbiotic relationship between Embiid and Tobias where they're like on court, they just have a feel for each other? I don't think that that's the case. I don't.
Yeah.
And I'm in favor of continuity generally. I'm in favor of drafting guys that then stay in the system for a while and role players that know how to play alongside or play off of your stars. Having some continuity in that, I think, is valuable, and I think sometimes gets overlooked in the idea of like, oh, we can just churn through these things, which obviously I think there's somewhere in the middle is generally the hope. But I think the reason why those teams have had continuity is because they have worked better together than the Sixers teams. Point. I think you could pick apart pieces within those years and go like, well, obviously they shouldn't have traded Jimmy, or it would have been nice if they'd kept Covington this whole time. Like there's kinds of pieces that you could go like, that guy could have been around for 4 or 5 years the way that like Chris Middleton or Brook Lopez or Marcus Smart or whatever has been around. They're more elite players this whole time. But on the early side of things, because of the turnover in the Sixers front office, there was a ton of turnover in the players also. And then Daryl came in and had to like undo a lot of that. And now here we are. And now it's like, okay, do you want to keep Harden and Tobias so that we can, because the idea of continuity is so strong and helpful. I think it's secondary to like having the right pieces than just continuity for continuity's sake.
Right. It's both. It's both. Yeah. So before we get to we have had a lot of pushback from the Mike, thank you for reacting to my 4 NBA takes that I had while I was running. Before we address the Pro-Harden faction who have flooded our email and social channels and voicemail channels, I would like to tell you about somebody who wants to flood you with jewelry. That's right. LL Pavorsky Jewelers. Up to 331 Rights to Ricky Sanchez listeners who have purchased engagement rings from LL. We saw 331 on our Instagram as the proposal happened in the middle of an Ed Sheeran concert. That's true. In the middle of an Ed Sheeran concert. Congratulations to them. LL, the first sponsor of the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. In some circles, the only sponsor of the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. Those circles, however, are at 707 Walnut, where LL has been for over 3 decades. He treats all of our listeners with respect. He treats them like as great as you could be treated by somebody who wants to sell you expensive jewelry. That's right, LL. He doesn't pressure you, and when you show up to the store, he doesn't want people wandering in that he has to pressure to buy jewelry. Nope. He wants to make an appointment with you so he can show the proper time and commitment to you. That is, if you're spending $1,000 on an engagement ring or $100,000 on an engagement ring, everyone is treated top-notch with LL Pavorsky. If you want to make an appointment, you can contact him in any number of ways. 215-627-2252. Email lee@llpavorsky.com. His psychotic Twitter @llpavorsky. LL is a generous supporter of our charities, Providence Animal Center and Mama T's Community Fridge. LL Pavorsky Jewelers.
A flood of jewelry sounds like one of the 10 plagues, but it's actually a really nice deal.
All right. So, Mike, I want to play a voicemail from 833-LickFace, then read you an email, and we'll start to address the Pro-Harden faction who has flooded our channels. 833-LickFace is the number.
Hey, Spike and Mike, it's Max again. Look, I get the proclivity to, move to Chris Paul. You guys are both very off on James Harden right now. Spike, I get it. Mike, you've been a little bit more jumpy with that. I don't understand why. Harden just had three or four of the best playoff games we've ever seen from a second guy compared to Joel. Look, I know he's a fucking loser. He's an absolute fucking loser, and he will never get it done. But, how quick are we to move off this guy? We should actually have a black and white conversation about what James Harden did here. He deserves that conversation. Thank you, boys.
So if James Harden was white, I'm just kidding. So this came from Ricardo.
I like supporting him and going obviously he's a loser. Obviously.
This came from Ricardo, who says, you are absolutely, hi, Spike, Mike, CJ, long time, first time from Brazil. You are absolutely wrong about James Harden, and you are doing to him the same as you did to Jimmy Butler. You are so lucky now to have Daryl to save you from yourself, or else in 4 years, you would see how Harden would have had more success than the Sixers. Harden is supposed to be the second option. He makes less money. He defers to Embiid. Come playoffs time, he wins a game versus Boston without Embiid, has 2 40-point games against a team with maybe the best perimeter defenders in the league. What about Embiid? Can't do shit against a senior Horford and 10 minutes a game, Robert Williams. Harden is inconsistent, yes, but what second option isn't? Murray, AD, Jaylen Brown, Bam. They all play like shit sometimes. But Jokic, Jimmy, LeBron are fucking winners and carry their ass. Embiid can't. I'm sorry, but I just heard you guys saying that you would prefer on a similar salary CP3 to Harden, and that is just absurd. CP3 is the point guard version of Embiid, always bitching and crying when the playoffs comes. He's hurt. I guess you guys deserve him. Harden almost beat the Durant Warriors, played with one leg, and almost beat the Celtics with Durant.
Fucking 7 years ago. What are we talking about? He's obviously very old now, and yes, he won 3 games. One by himself in the first round, and 2 basically by himself in the second round. And I think the problem is that that's not a repeatable strategy. It wasn't like he looked so good in those games. Even the shots that were going in, it didn't feel like there's nothing they can do with this guy. He can't get by people. The step back is really all that there is as far as him. I appreciate him winning those games, and we have, I think, appropriately given him credit for winning those games. But the bad games are so bad, and the good games feel like just really lucky. It doesn't feel like this is he can do this over and over again. Simply a Harden-based team can get it done and take the ball out of Embiid's hands so Harden can operate. He was very helpful in the regular season. He was very helpful to Embiid getting an MVP. But we've seen Harden fail so many times in so many playoff moments because he doesn't. And now he's so much older than he had been at that point that he doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the in-between game. He doesn't play hard enough to get it done when other things aren't getting there. With Chris Paul, and I'm not saying he's bad. I don't love either option. But with Chris Paul, at least you go this guy's not going to, at this stage in his career, isolate so much and force up foul baity like floater that he has no touch on. At least Chris Paul's going to move the ball. At least Chris Paul's going to shoot off the catch. At least Chris Paul's going to try hard. At least Chris Paul's going to be a better defender. They're both pretty old, and Harden did play better on defense than before. But to me, it's just Chris Paul at this point in his career is a role player. Harden at this point in his career still thinks he's not, but plays not good enough on a consistent level to be anywhere close to a dependable star. And in the playoffs, we've just seen it too many times. He just turtles away and doesn't feel like doing other stuff. And he's already so limited in so many ways. Unless the step back is going, he's not going to be able to beat good defenders. And those two games were huge. Those two games were obviously better in the playoffs than Embiid has really ever been against a good team, really good team. But I don't think that is able to be duplicated in any meaningful way going forward as he gets older and like less happy in his role.
Mike spitting fire and speaking truth. I just wanted to wrap up the email as he says, long live Harden and long live Paul Reed. Sorry if I came off aggressive, not very good English and trying to be funny. Love the podcast. Listen every time. My favorite. And I don't even like the Sixers.
Thanks, pal.
So
that's
yeah.
Nice. Every email should end with an apology.
Yeah. I don't want Chris Paul either. But this is what I can't get out of my head with Harden. Everything you said is true. 100%. About the lucky stuff. And I think we started talking about that very middle of the season where we're like, hey, you notice if the three's going in, everything's fine. And if it isn't, then there's nothing there. What I can't get out of my head with Harden is 3 games. Miami, game 6. Boston, game 6. Boston, game 7. He looked like he wanted to lose. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere but there. I agree that Joel Embiid shows similar tendencies, but there is less of a resume, and we don't have any choice with Embiid. Like this is the guy. We just have to hope it turns around. James Harden is 34 years old and has too many instances where deciding games, he gets up 10 shots. He quit in those 3 games. He quit in them. And then he leaked to the media that he wants the offense. The guy who had the ball more than any other player in the NBA wants the ball to revolve around him more.
Yeah.
He's just delusional. I'm sorry.
And there's I think people will rightfully go, well, Embiid is 29, but maybe his body is not even it has a 34-year-old's body at this point because of the injuries and whatever, and you can't depend on him. Embiid at 70% health at least is still an anchor to your defense. Even if his conditioning never improves, like he's helpful even if he's not the offensive option. You can see a world where Maxey continues improving and the offense can run through him more than it has or more than Joel for longer periods of time, while Joel can still be the anchor to like a top 5-10 defense, even if he's not as good as he used to be. Harden is not helpful on defense, and if things aren't revolving around him, he's not like a catch and shoot guy. Like there's just so many mines that you're having to avoid with James Harden at this point in his career that I'm just pretty much not interested in dealing with that, because even the highest upside possibility is still, like that caller said, he's probably a loser and he probably doesn't want it there. So the floors are so low. The floors could not be lower with James Harden at this point in his career, as he gets older, as he gets more, I don't know, unhappy with the amount of sacrifice he's had to do in the year and a half that he was in Philadelphia. So I think just I would love the offense to not revolve around Joel as much as it does. I think have the offense revolving around a big that doesn't have a elite passing, that doesn't have elite touch, is really difficult. Really difficult in the modern NBA. I think he can improve on some of those things for sure. But I would love for there to be a big wing type that he can run pick and roll with, and then Maxey can run pick and roll, something like that. Like all that stuff. Fewer Joel-based possessions where it's just dump it into him, let him do something with it in the playoffs would be great for me. But I don't think James Harden is the answer to that in any way.
Thank you to the emailers. There was a few other emails. I'm not going to read them, but they all specifically said the same thing. Just, there is something to, yes, I understand what you're saying in that, like, he as a player in a whole value sense is probably more valuable than the player you will replace him with. But we just can't see it end the same way again.
Yeah.
Can't see it end the same way again.
Yeah, that's why like if you can, I'm looking at my Tobias trades down the list.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can DeRozan isn't a perfect player by any means, but like that's starting to look better and better to me. If Harden just walks and you can flip Tobias Korkmaz in a pick for DeRozan, and people would push back on this because his career might be over, but I still think it's a worthwhile risk to take Lonzo. Then you go like Maxey, DeRozan, and Embiid. Makes just a lot of sense. Just from a, like, we have different ways to beat you type of way. DeRozan is a better defender than Harden. Obviously still not great. Still somewhat reluctant to shoot off the catch, but not as unhappy and more of a willing cutter than Harden is. And still gives you a lot of the same, like, can get to the line, that kind of thing. So that's becoming, if Chicago wants to mix it up, that's becoming probably maybe my favorite trade possibility this offseason.
Congratulations to TJ McConnell, our own TJ McConnell of the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. The San Francisco 49ers ownership group has reached an agreement to take over English soccer club Leeds, with NBA players Larry Nance Jr. and TJ McConnell joining as minority investors. The NFL team's investment arm, 49ers Enterprises, originally bought a 15% stake from Leeds chairman Andrea Rizzani in 2018 and increased it to 44% in late 2021. I believe I read that Leeds was just relegated out of Premier League, which I think probably makes them a better buy at this point, because then you can make them better and you can get back into Premier League. That's what I know of soccer. But the fact that TJ leaves here, TJ was, when we met him, a unlikely to make the team training camp body, and now is a wine guy and owns a European soccer club. Talk about a glow up. We're still here doing the podcast. Our best story here is we have better microphones. Mm-hmm. What the fuck, man? Like, what the fuck happened to TJ? Are we happy for him? Are we jealous? Like, where are we with this?
Happy for the guy. Didn't get into a club because people didn't recognize he was on a member of the Sixers. Now he's in ownership. He's like a 8-year NBA veteran.
Yeah,
that's awesome. That kicks ass. And a part of another potential Tobias trade where he comes back to Philly with Buddy Hield and Dan Tice. So
he was.
I'm happy for the guy. He's a sweet guy. He's always very nice to us.
The best. Yeah. I know he has a lot of. Still has a lot of connections back here in Philly. I know he and his wife really like Philly. It would be great if he ended up back here at some point. But he's got a real career, man. He could play another 8 years in the NBA, I bet, like without any problem. So congratulations to TJ. I feel real good for him. Big Barker Dog Beds. Woof, woof. Big Barker, a sponsor of the Ricky for a long time, truly believe in the product. I know, you look at the dog bed and you're just, all you want to do is you want to check it off the box. Check the box. Oh, we got a bed for the dog. You adopt a new dog, you have your dog. Oh, the dog looks like it likes the bed. Dog's a fucking idiot. Dog's a dog. It's up to you to make sure that the dog is eating the right things, is being as healthy as possible. Dog would eat fucking stuff off the street all the time, but you feed the dog food that you feel like is good for the dog. With beds, you need to give it the same attention that you give food, that you take it to the vet. That's why a Big Barker dog bed is different and necessary. Go to bigbarker.com/Ricky. That is bigbarker.com/Ricky. You get the Big Barker dog bed. You get 2 Process Pup patches to put on the Big Barker dog bed. send us an email. If we haven't gotten any in a couple of weeks, Rights to Ricky Sanchez at gmail.com, Rights to Ricky Sanchez at gmail.com of your dog on the big barker. We'll put him in the Process Pup gallery. What's the difference? The difference is it's a real bed. It supports your dog's joints. It keeps your dog healthier. Penn Vet did a study showing this exact thing. Your dog sleeps a long time. And all I want you to do is think about when you sleep on a bed. If you sleep on a bad bed, on a non-supportive mattress, you wake up, your back hurts. And by the way, the older you get, the worse that is. I can tell you that for sure. And even though the dog bed that you have your dog on looks comfortable, it looks more like a pillow than it does a mattress. You want it to look like a mattress. Big Barker dog beds engineered by experts to give that support to your dog, and it is different. It's just different. You can see it in the pictures. You can see it when it arrives at home. They look beautiful in the house, all different colors, all different shapes, all different sizes. It looks like a piece of furniture in your house. Really, really nice. Rebel sleeps on one. I couldn't recommend it enough. It's got a 10-year warranty. The foam doesn't flatten or they replace it for free. A 1-year at-home trial. If you don't like it, if your dog doesn't like it, they'll give you a full refund and they'll pay for the shipping. It's handmade in the USA. Big Barker dog beds. What do we got here? The hard to stomach YouTube comment of the week comes from Nathaniel Miranda. We got a bunch of these as we were talking about Harden's potential return and whether he would get booed and the Jimmy Butler return. I was at the Jimmy Butler return game in November 2019. We booed him so hard that I couldn't talk the next day. Wells Fargo Center was aggressively booing him every time he touched the ball in an absolute blowout win.
That's fair. I
remember it now.
Be counted on for memory at this point. I am 33. I am on strike. The Young Rock just got canceled, so now I'm on double strike.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Sorry, did you? Well, I guess we can't really talk about the details of that, but people, we got some Twitters and a couple of emails about it. I didn't know if we were to talk about it or not.
No, you can talk about it.
Is it at all strike related, perhaps, or no?
I mean, I'm sure part of it in the sense that studios are losing money and Young Rock, because of Dwayne and flying in cast and stuff, is probably an expensive show, I would guess. But I would say I was surprised by it. I think other people were a little bit resigned to this happening, but I sort of thought like, well, he's Dwayne Johnson. They're going to give him another season. But it didn't happen, which is a bummer because I really liked a lot of people on that show and it was fun to make and fun to write for. But anyway, I was on the Athletic NBA podcast, and they asked me a bunch of processy questions, and like my memory's not there anymore, you guys. It's not going to happen. So the fact that I don't remember that Jimmy was booed in his game back, you're going to have to let me off the hook for that one. You're just going to have to do it. Or accept that I'm not maybe as smart as I used to be, which is also fine. I
didn't remember it as we talked about it, but as soon as people brought it up, I remembered it specifically, if that makes any sense. It didn't, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that blowout. I remember it pretty well. So Rights to Ricky Sanchez at gmail.com or 833-LickFace is how you get a hold of us. Rights to Ricky Sanchez at gmail.com is an email address. 833-LickFace is a voicemail line. This comes from, how about Scott? Last pod, Mike mentioned he needs this team to get faster and more athletic. We all want that, right? I hate watching this Sixers team. I'm in Utah, and I have to buy NBA League Pass to hate watch the Sixers. I watch every game and root for them to win, but this is the least fun Sixers team to watch since the pre-Hinkie era. Why? Because they're so fucking slow, predictable, and unathletic. I just pulled up the tracking data at NBA.com. Slowest average speed in the NBA, James Harden. This especially sucks because James Harden is second in NBA average time of possession.
Yeah.
Second slowest average speed in the NBA, Joel Embiid, DeAndre Jordan, and Chris Paul. Slowest average speed on defense, Chris Paul. Second slowest average speed on defense, Harden and Luka. These results are similar on offense, with Embiid having the lowest average speed on offense in the NBA. No question about that data. I just found it interesting. I don't want Harden. I also don't want CP3. But if I have to make a choice between Harden on a multi-year near max contract and one season at CP3, I'm taking CP3 without hesitation. So,
yeah, I think that's a great email. And I appreciate receiving it. And I guess Chris Paul has always been, and especially in his older age, continues to be deliberate with the ball. But he seems less locked into sort of binary code that Harden is. It seems like there's a little bit of more fluidity to his game and willingness to let other people operate, whereas Harden is sort of like, I must have the ball at all times. But I think that is reasonably fair, and it is also reasonably fair for us to say that the similarities between Chris Paul and Harden would be too much to stomach, and they should be looking in a different direction. I'm fine just for speed alone and athleticism go in that direction. I mean, like a Maxey Chris Paul backcourt would be small. A Maxey Fred VanVleet backcourt would be small, although Fred moves a lot more than those guys. The options aren't excellent. Like, we're not out here saying like, look at this wealth of riches that we have, that all the possibilities are so good. We could just flip a coin and pick any of the good ones.
The possibilities aren't endless. There's like one.
Yeah, there's not that many.
Yeah.
But this is why Daryl gets paid a lot of money, and why Elton's still there, and there's creativity in that front office, and let's see what they come up with.
Speaking of options, and Daryl, 833 Lickface.
Hey, Spike, Mike, CJ, Chris calling from Dallas, Texas. I have a question for you guys. I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough that the Tyrese Haliburton deal, sorry, that was my dog. The Tyrese Haliburton deal was on the table, and we didn't take it. I mean, just think about where we'd be right now, even had we lost in the second round again, if we had Tyrese Haliburton on the team locked into a contract rather than James Harden with Nick Nurse. I think that would be an exciting future, something that we can get, at least a little bit excited about. Of all the failures that this team has had, we talk about the Tatum thing and the Markelle thing. I think there's so many things, but this is the one that I think might be the most realistic blunder that we've had in years. So curious, your thoughts on that. Thanks, guys. Love the pod.
That guy cannot listen to every episode of the podcast, which is fine, but I talk about it all the time. I'm bringing this up constantly. I'm having to stop myself from relitigating it, and you're not arguing the other side of it. It's just me saying the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Yes, Tyrese Haliburton. Absolutely Tyrese Haliburton. I think we talked ourselves into the idea of a win now thing because of Embiid's unknown prime longevity. But absolutely, if this was a Maxey, Haliburton, and Embiid core, even if they had just lost in the exact same way in the second round, we would go like, well, they're going to grow together, and there's going to be more connectivity, and they can think about the guys that would want to play with those guys, and you could fill in veterans, and he plays so fast, and he's such a quick processing NBA player, and the jumper looks weird, but he really is a good shooter. That'd be amazing. Absolutely. I get Daryl went for the known quantity, and Harden was helpful in his time here, but if it was a Maxey, Haliburton, and Embiid situation, we would all be in such a better place.
Yeah, I mean, we talked ourselves into Al Horford, like,
sure,
and sometimes in retrospect, I don't even think talking ourselves into Harden over Haliburton at the time was crazy. In retrospect, it was wrong.
It was wrong, yeah.
That's it.
Well, because it's easier to go. I think it's the idea of hope, right? With Harden, you don't have much hope at this stage in his career. You don't expect him to get better. You don't expect the synergy to work in a more effective way. You don't expect him to like turn things around in the playoffs. But if you have a young guy like Haliburton who is still growing and improving, like, you can tell yourself that there's a possibility. If you go for the all-in move now and go, we're going to get the older guy, then like naturally there's going to be fewer opportunities to succeed because there's only so much left in the tank. And so I think any move that you make that is like old guy win now is more likely to lose and feel worse than young guy could get good, even though Haliburton was good right away. Yeah, I would have loved Haliburton. I loved him coming out. I had him way higher than anybody else. Everybody, I think the consensus did. He was exactly my kind of player. He's beautiful. I love him. He talks to he's friends with Caitlin Cooper. He wears Caitlin Cooper's shirt. Pacers blogger and writer who has been on this podcast. It's just he's like a singular type of talent that seems to also to be a joy to play with, and he doesn't seem like a loser at all.
I would say this: we talked ourselves into, and I think not incorrectly so, Harden at the time. But I can say this: if they had made the Haliburton trade, none of us would be complaining. None of us would have complained at the time.
No.
None of us, zero.
No.
We would have been like, wow, they got Tyrese Haliburton for Ben Simmons. We would have been 1 bazillion% fine.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, have you seen the Ben Simmons shirtless gym photos that are surfacing?
Yeah. I've never stopped seeing them. They're always just there. Just coming through. They're like it's like a targeted ad at this point. I just scroll. It's scrolling past it. Like, yeah, I'm sure Motorola has great deals. Like, let me just get past that. Yeah, also just like Haliburton, man, just would have worked. It just would have made so much more. I think at the time it was like he's James Harden, and he still was James Harden at the time, and you could hope that like the stuff in Brooklyn was weird enough that like maybe that there was an extra gear that he could come back to, and I think to some extent he did, but still fell into the same Harden issues. Haliburton, I think, is because they maybe didn't believe in Maxey as much as he did. Like, if you believed Maxey, if you believed in Maxey at the time of that Harden trade, the Simmons Harden trade, that he would get to be as good as he is now and continue to grow, then I think you would go like, okay, we could think a little bit wider as a championship window. And if you think Embiid health wise, obviously he's had health issues and concussions and random shit, but like for the most part, Embiid. If you would have told me 5 years ago that Embiid would be as healthy as he has been in these 5 years,
I would have been stunned.
We've been happy. We're happy with how healthy Embiid is. Obviously, he's had issues in the playoffs and unfortunately timed, random shit. But I think we can stop thinking about Embiid as like a ticking clock so much, or a ticking time bomb, I guess more.
I think that's a good point.
And so, like, maybe the Harden was really like the more conservative move at the time, where it's like, okay, Embiid is healthy for we don't know how long. Maxey is good, but who knows if this is going to continue, or if he's going to grow, whatever. So let's get the guy that we know is at least very good now and give ourselves the best chance to win right now. Both long-term and bigger swing was probably Haliburton and him continuing to grow after his rookie season in Sacramento, and Embiid being healthy and Maxey continuing to improve, and those guys working it out. So I don't know if Daryl would ever say I regret that, or both of those deals were on the table and I took the one that I felt was more of a known quantity. At the time, I would have loved the Haliburton trade, and now looking back at how much Haliburton has gotten better and how much Harden has been, fine, but the team hasn't succeeded. Looking back, it's even more of a home run to have done that trade.
Now, we heard from a caller on the last pod who believes that he has confirmed the Harden house sex bubble story.
Right.
Do you think it's possible that Daniel House covered for James Harden and therefore Harden owed House, but maybe James Harden has covered for sex for Daryl and Daryl owes Harden?
I don't think that. Daryl's been with his wife since college. I don't think Daryl's out there. I think he's looking at girls in yoga pant, but I don't think he's doing much else other than that.
Who hasn't?
I would love to know the connected network of who is covering for other guys, sex lives or whatever it is. I would love to know if there's like, oh, well, if you trade for Malik Beasley, then you have to trade for this guy also. Like, it's just like it's a tandem, a package deal situation because of favors owed.
Rights to Ricky Sanchez at gmail.com. This comes from AJ. On what other podcast would Jonah Bolden take a stray to the chest in a discussion about Jokic? No other pod would dare. Love you guys. My non-basketball question is, what is the last book you guys read? I read like 2 books a year. So, Mike, do you know the last book that you read? I do,
yeah.
Reading currently a book. Go ahead.
I read The Sympathizer, which is a really interesting book, and I'm now reading the sequel, which is called The Committed, by Viet Thanh Nguyen, which I really like very much. And I'm mixing it up. I've been reading a lot lately. I read it while I had The Flights for the Honeymoon, which was a prime reading time. I find myself enjoying reading and wanting to read more, but find it still, yeah. There's a bunch of books I'm excited to read. Alyssa just got Burn It All Down, which is a book about the TV industry. She's reading that right now as we speak, I believe. Yeah.
The last one I read was My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh, which I loved. I'm currently trying to read The Shards by Bret Easton Ellis, but fiction's really hard for me, so I'm like grinding through it. And then on vacation, which I have in a little while, there's a book that just came out, the Where Are Your Boys Tonight, which is the oral history of emo's mainstream explosion, which a friend of Jason and AU's, Chris Payne, wrote, which I'm excited to read as well. I can get through nonfiction a lot better than I can get through fiction. I have a lot of trouble reading fiction sometimes. 833 Lickface, speaking of nonfiction.
Hey, Spike, Mike, and CJ, this is Mac. I was calling in with a non-basketball question. The Vanderpump Rules world has been blowing up recently. My wife has looped me in, and we just got done watching all of the reunion episodes. Would highly recommend to anybody because they are too much. But one of the things that I saw pop up in them was that Ariana mentioned Tom Sandoval, that she wishes that she could go back to the early stages of their relationship where they were cooking and listening to War on Drugs and all of those different things. And I just was wondering if Mike had a take about this, considering his deep affiliation with the reality shows in general from Bravo. So would love to hear your take. Thanks. Bye.
I assume you're a Vanderpump Rules person. I believe you brought it up before.
Yes, I'm a big Vanderpump Rules person. It has for a few months. They're taking over our lives. We went to a bar the other night that was like hosting a Vanderpump watch party. And they were playing the NBA finals first, and then the game ended and it was like, okay, switching to Bravo. And then it was a packed bar. It was really fun. Yes, Ariana did mention the War on Drugs on Vanderpump. Alyssa gasped when she said it. It's very cool it makes both parties look good, I would say. It makes Ariana look good, and obviously makes the War on Drugs look good of their kinds of music being in the cultural zeitgeist. It was a beautiful season of television. It is a fantastic show. Alyssa and I would say, gatekeep the people that just come in for the last couple episodes and go like, everybody's talking about this thing, so I'm just going to watch it now. You got to watch the full show. In order to be a respectable human being, you have to go back to season 1 and watch the entire show. It is phenomenal. The first 2 seasons of that show are excellent, and there's just so many beautiful moments of how horrible all these people are to each other. It's so funny. It really enriches the entire history of these people's relationships to each other. I've loved this season. I will miss it very much. Not having it in my life, but yeah, definitely recommend Vanderpump. Definitely recommend going back to the beginning to really soak it in and feel. And I think watching the show now with the knowledge of what happened in Scandoval is a different kind of viewing experience, and also will be fun. So that's my rec.
I've never seen it. So Rights to Ricky Sanchez at gmail.com. It's not a dismissal. I've just never seen it. We'll never will see it. So Mike is the Vanderpump Rules guy. That's
right.
This is from Ben. Hi, Spike, Mike, and CJ. It's the off season. Who cares about basketball and this stupid team? I had forgotten about Mike's penis injury. The off season. And with it being the off season, what better time to now ask this question? Does Mike have any permanent indicator of his injury? The reason I ask is because when I was in high school, I got into a grappling wrestling fight with one of my friends, and he accidentally kneed me directly in the penis, not the balls, but a direct shot to the head of my wiener. It was excruciatingly painful, and I actually ended up with a bruise on the head of my dong. And no, I was not erect, because I know there's a weirdo listener wondering about that right now. To this day, some 25 years later, I have 2 small dark patches on the tip of my gentleman's sausage as a result of this. Everything is still fully functional, as I am currently the father of 4 children. Anyway, just wondering if Mike bruised his junk and if it left a mark.
Nope. Tip of my penis, doing great. Couldn't be better. All
no
good.
dark spot on there. Nothing. Right.
It is a very distinct feeling. Obviously, getting hit in the balls gets all the publicity generally, but Getting hit in the tip of the penis is a unique feeling. Deserves more, I would say. Culturally,
Getting hit in the balls gets all the publicity.
it does. It absolutely does.
Final voicemail 833 Lickface.
Hey, Mike, Spike, and TJ. This is Wooly calling in. I'm offended that Bob and Barbara's, the dive bar that you mentioned on South Street, is not known the birthplace of the Citywide, and it's 100% PBR and Jim Beam. I can't see it any other way. I highly recommend going down to the birthplace of Citywide and enjoying one. You won't regret it. Bye.
You know, on the last pod, somebody had asked a question about what would our Citywide be, and my contention was I believed it was just PBR and Jim Beam. I didn't get Bob and Barbara's off the top of my head, but I did like sort of mention the location of it. Didn't I, CJ? Did I get credit for at least? I think I said it was like the high streets and South Street, wherever the bar was. I couldn't remember the name of it, but I feel like I should at least get partial credit for that. And I don't.
I'll give you partial credit. I unfortunately, to my everlasting shame, have never lived in Philadelphia as an adult.
Right.
So I don't have the, unfortunately, civic knowledge and although I have the civic pride, I don't have the specifics that everybody else does. So when I come into town, I experience the city. I love it. I wish that I got to live there as an adult for years, but I have been to Bob and Barbara's, but if I hang out with some friends, I will enjoy it and regret the time I didn't have there, which makes me a fraud, and that's fine.
All right. We will talk. We're what, 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks from the NBA draft, and then
we should do a draft podcast.
Yes,
the Sixers have 0 picks.
Can we do it?
If they don't acquire one, I'm going to lose my mind. I've just decided to do it. You cannot go 2 consecutive drafts not making a selection. Not to me. You cannot do that to me. This is a great draft class. This is a tremendous draft class. They need to trade their way in and get a guy who can grow onto this team for years. There are going to be players available like that, whether that's early second round, mid second round. There's plenty of guys that can do it. I'm understanding that the cost will be there, but find an owner that just got sued for some shitty business practice or whatever and go, do you want $2.5 million? And he'll say, yes, here's the 36th pick in the draft. And we should have that pick and allow me to make the selection.
Maybe a draft pod next weekend gives me a week to polish up YouTube. Is that?
But the problem is, I don't think it makes sense to do like, here's our top 20. It should just be like, I mean, I guess yours is always more hit and miss, but I should serve you a platter of guys to look at, because if you're looking at like Wembanyama, that's not helpful necessarily, although you should,
especially because he's going to get hurt within 2 weeks of playing the first time. I've seen enough video of that guy. The guy's an injury waiting to happen. It's too long and spidery, been healthy like a praying mantis. He's
been healthy for a long time and has taken on like he has endured like physicality and physical play. Like I think obviously there's a stigma about like being a tall, skinny guy and getting hurt. Like that's not unique, but I think he's been preparing for this, and the people around him have been preparing for this for a long time. So hopefully not. He's a sick player.
I don't want him to get hurt. That is absolutely not my.
You just don't like guys that are too tall and skinny or too wide.
Yeah.
You like middle.
Yeah, and I think just in general, I've had a pretty decent record of that guy looks like he's going to get hurt. That's all. I just look at Wembanyama and I think about NBA players. They're just so fucking big and strong. It's just so different than wherever else these guys are playing. But whatever. Hopefully he doesn't get hurt. He looks like a pretty sick player otherwise, you know. And our guy Brett Brown gets to fucking coach him, which is exciting.
That is very exciting for him.
All right. We will talk to you next time. Are you done with TTP?
Yeah. Lickface.